So by now you have probably heard about flipped learning or flipped instruction or the flipped class. But what exactly does that mean? This presentation will introduce you to what flipped learning is all about, as well as some tools to help you get started. Let's start though with an introduction to what is flipped learning all about. The idea of flipping instruction is the idea that we take what traditionally we might have thought of as teacher-directed classroom and flip instead the learning into the student's hands, where the work that's being done inside the classroom is one in which the students have ownership over, that they're doing more of the work in the classroom. It also is the idea that it becomes student-focused rather than what we might traditionally think of as a teacher-focused classroom, where the teacher is giving directions or giving notes at the front of the classroom. And the big flip is taking some of the lower order thinking activities and moving those to the homework and leaving class time to do more higher order conceptual thinking activities. Two of the big innovators of this idea of the flipped classroom are Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams, who write in their book, Flip the Classroom, that flipping the classroom is more about a mindset, redirecting attention away from the teacher and putting attention on the learner and the learning. In fact, having met Aaron Sams recently, one of the things that he said was that the idea of whether we call it flipped class or flipped learning or flipped instruction really doesn't matter. Instead, the big idea, the big takeaway, is that we take what we traditionally think of as the lower order thinking activities, those in which we are directing our students to do something, and move those outside of the classroom, making those the homework piece, so that we can do more of that higher order thinking, the practicing activities, the things that we might have traditionally done as homework, and bring them into the classroom. So students have an opportunity to practice and learn and receive coaching and mentorship while they're in the classroom.
I'm Aaron Sams. We're here in Woodland Park, Colorado at Woodland Park High School. Flipped learning, I think, on a really basic level is taking what has traditionally been given in a lecture in terms of direct instruction and shifting that out of the class time and then using that recuperated time more wisely, more valuably to really meet the individual learning needs of students. The way I got started doing this is I just started recording my lessons live for my students who were missing class and posting those online for them as a resource. They get to access it when they want to, and that could be at 10 o'clock at night, it could be 6 o'clock in the morning, it could be on the bus to the soccer game. They have control of that. Students would watch those before they came to class, and then class time was work time, engaging in some higher order thinking, and so we didn't have to use our class time for direct instruction. We could shift that out of the class.
There's a site where we go to and we watch our podcast, and it has like all the units.
And during the class period, we're doing labs and applying the skills that we learned at home.
I wish more people would do the flipped classroom. I think it definitely works for every speed of learner.
If a student is a fast learner, they can go through the material as quickly as they want. The slower learners, the students who struggle, they have control of the rate at which they learn the material. So they can pause the teacher, they can rewind the teacher, they can view it multiple times if they need to. If everyone's not doing the same thing at the same time on the same day, my class looks a little chaotic. It looks like a three-ring circus of learning is what I call
it. So if we take it at that idea, it's the idea that we're moving from a traditional classroom, which may be lecture-based, to doing more activities in the classroom and using classroom time to actually engage with students, but also have students engage with one another to build that community and to build learning collaboratively. So the key idea of flipped learning, or the flipped classroom model, is that students will either watch or not just watch videos, but also do homework at their own pace. And that might be through a series of web pages or activities that you have linked to your classroom website, but doing the direct instruction sorts of things that we had done in the past at home. And then inside the classroom, we're using that opportunity to learn through activity, to learn from one another. In doing that, we create a learning environment where students are learning from one another, and the teacher becomes more of a mentor and a coach. So how this all came to be, you sort of heard, is that Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams started to record their classes and use class time instead to do more hands-on activities. Teachers across the country have been taking up that challenge as well. So it's not just chemistry teachers that do this, but also math teachers and, like myself, English teachers, with the idea being that we take some of that didactic material and move it out of the classroom and post it online where students can access it and re-access it as many times as they need to. So this looks like a very different classroom space than perhaps we traditionally think of. Students are at home maybe watching a 5 to 7 minute video, and the classroom is a bit chaotic at times because students are working and talking with one another and talking with the teacher. But that support helps us to gauge better where our students are in their learning and differentiate where students are in order to better help them meet their learning goals. As you heard Aaron Sams talk about in the video just previously, there have been some very good preliminary results with students and with schools that have tried this flipped approach, with less students failing because they're able to re-watch material, pause, rewind, and move at their own pace in some ways. So then why does this work? Well, by flipping the didactic information over to online videos, whether they're ones that you create or ones that you've specifically selected from high quality videos that you have found online for your students to watch, they have the ability to pause, to rewind, to learn really at their own pace. And so, in the words of Aaron Sams and John Bergman, students then become responsible for viewing the videos and asking the appropriate question. The ownership gets put back on the students. The teacher is simply there to provide expert feedback. The students are responsible for completing and sharing their work, for making appropriate use of the resident expert, you, the teacher, to help them understand the concepts. And that's kind of the key. It's not that you're asking students to watch videos and then coming to classroom and doing nothing with them. Students have to be doing something with those videos that you're asking them to watch outside of class.
I prefer it because then you can get all the work done at school where the teacher's there to ask for help. Because a lot of times if you learn at school and you go home and do the work, then your parents can't help you because they don't know it.
So let's talk a little bit about what the flipped classroom is not.
As a flipped classroom teacher, I've seen lots of misconceptions around what the flipped classroom is and what the flipped classroom is not. So, rather than discussing what the flipped classroom is in my practice, I'll discuss a list that most flipped classroom teachers can agree the flipped classroom is not. So, let's get started. The flipped classroom is not the Khan Academy. While the Khan Academy is an excellent resource for use in and out of the classroom, the flipped classroom is special because classroom teachers create the videos to suit their students' needs. We want students to be active in their learning, not droids sitting in front of screens getting a lecture from someone halfway across the globe. The videos are an extension of the teacher and help create a strong relationship between student and teacher. The flipped classroom is not a replacement of teachers. This couldn't be further from the truth. In the flipped classroom, the role of the teacher is more important than ever. There's no sitting at the back of the class reading the newspaper and having a coffee, as much as I'd like to sometimes. In the flipped classroom, the teacher is active all day. Teachers get a chance to work with every student, every class. The flipped classroom is not all about the videos. Yeah, videos are the backbone of the flipped classroom, and I am hoping one of these days to produce a video that goes viral and perhaps appear on Ellen. However, it is the flexibility the videos provide that is the true benefit. Teachers now have additional classroom time where they can develop rich learning activities to extend their students' experience. The flipped classroom is not the silver bullet. The flipped classroom does not solve all that is broken in education. If it did, I'd probably be filthy rich. It's just one tool to increase student learning. Inflexibility, lack of classroom time, and student-centered classrooms problems that I feel the flipped classroom helps solve. The flipped classroom is not a one-size-fits-all teaching approach. Each flipped classroom teacher develops an approach that works for them and their students. As an example, some teachers have students watch the videos in class, some students watch them at home, in a car, on a bus, on a plane. It's turning into a Dr. Seuss book. And some even get the students to create the videos themselves. The limits of the flipped classroom are only as limited as the teacher's imagination. The flipped classroom is not top-down. The flipped classroom is 100% driven by teachers. For the model to be authentic, it needs to be initiated and created by the teacher for the teacher. How often have we attended a staff meeting to be presented with the newest flavor of the week to never give it another thought? The flipped classroom is a flavor teachers want to do because they believe in it. And it's delicious. The flipped classroom is not a teacher holiday. The flipped classroom is anything but a holiday. The amount of time that goes into creating quality videos and activities is second to none. In the classroom, teachers are no longer spending the time lecturing. Instead, they're constantly interacting with their students, inspiring, observing, and as we all know, sometimes prodding. Flip classroom is not easy. Students have been in the traditional model of school for their entire educational career. They like playing school. Some of them are very good at it. Now that we want them to play learning, it can be a tough pill for them to swallow. And lastly, the flipped classroom is not all about students watching videos for homework. It's about students using videos when and where appropriate for their learning journey. Many of my students find that they use their classroom time so effectively they rarely have homework. And believe me, they love this. Now they have time for things that truly matter to them, like Twitter and Facebook. These are just a couple of things I think the flipped classroom is, and the flipped classroom is not.
So there's a little bit about what it's not. So what is the flipped classroom and how do I get into doing this? Well, the first thing that you might want to start to look for are resources. And you'll find that TED Ed, if you're not familiar with TED, that stands for Technology, Education, and Design. They're speeches that both famous and non-famous people do on areas that they are experts in. And TED has created an educational section of their website which allows you to flip lessons from YouTube right there and create not only videos that are tailored for your classroom, but also questions and reflection materials for students. Khan Academy is another great site, as you heard earlier, with a lot of wonderful instructional videos, mainly for the hard sciences, math, chemistry, biology. FlipLearning.com also is a clearinghouse of teachers creating videos and houses a lot of wonderful articles and research pieces about why this works and also how you can make it work for you. You're also going to need some screencasting programs. You can find a number of them free online, like Screencast-O-Matic.com, which is a free and easy one not only for teachers to use, but students to use if you're asking them to create videos, or also Camtasia and Jing. You'll also need a place to house your videos. You may use your school website. You can upload them to YouTube, create some playlists for students, Vimeo, which is what I use, or you can upload them if you're already using sites like Edmodo or Wikis or Nings. In planning your first flipped video, you'll want to think ahead of time about what and why it is that you want to flip. Remember that the teacher is the most important function of the classroom. This isn't about, as Paul Anderson states, it isn't about just creating videos for the simplicity of creating videos. Instead, you want to think very clearly about what it is you're flipping and why. The effective flipped classroom is one that has students bringing in outside research and connections during student-led discussions. And because they're watching videos outside the classroom, you actually have time to have discussions. Ask students to utilize critical thinking skills in order to work through higher-order thinking tasks. Remember, that's what you're leaving for the in-class work. It's highly collaborative, so students shift between academic discussions based on both their interest and their academic needs. It strives to put learning in context, to make purpose for the classwork meaningful by connecting it to the real world, gives students opportunities to demonstrate their learning in meaningful ways. Again, it's more of that higher order thinking, that creating, evaluating, analysis. Showcases students challenging one another on the content, and also creates a space where student-led tutoring and collaboration sort of arises naturally. You're effectively building a classroom community. So this is one of the very first flip videos that I did with my class. I start out my very first day of class by having students craft a metaphor for their writing process. And then they watch a video which explains how to do that. So it's sort of a tech video in some ways. But other things that I have flipped in class have included not just instructions and explanations of rubrics, but have included things like my grammar lessons, how to write an effective intro paragraph, things where students can refer back to later on and will help them as they grow as both writers and readers. In the videos that you'll see, they're not always like high quality, highly animated videos. They typically are quickly put together videos that are asking students to do something with the material being presented, like this one.
Hello and welcome to Grammar Lesson 1. So, what I write down on the page is important, so you should write it down on the page. Also, too, know that because I'm using the actual size of a piece of paper here while I'm writing, that everything should fit in your page as well.
And notice, he's asking in this video his students to do something with the material that he's presenting. And that's sort of key. There's no one right way to create videos for your class. So whether you're using like a Prezi, like I am here, and narrating it using screencasting materials, whether you're actually setting up a video camera while video records you in front of your whiteboard, is really up to you. There's no one right way to do it.
When using his superpowers, the superhero A will say his name and put up his big muscle arms and say A.
Hey.
Number 13, hat. The girl wore a big hat.
Distance from 0 to 1 is the same as the distance from 1 to 2. Likewise, it's the same as the distance from 2 to 3, and so on and so on.
Now with those phrases, what we can do is simply say me gusta and then attach them to the end. So, an example, I could say, picking from that list, me gusta tocar la guitarra, me gusta cantar.
Well, see, you guys had developed this massive bomb that you used on Japan after World War II. And we wanted to be big and bad as well and powerful. So we started to try to create nuclear weapons to rival yours.
What became the big bomb? And of course we have command economies, in other words for those who are planned, centrally planned, command and control, or socialism.
Welcome class. Today I will be sharing with you how to make a fruit smoothie. These things are scrumdiddlyumptious, tasty, good.
So again, you can see people are making flipped classroom videos in a variety of different ways. Some questions that you may have. One is access. What happens if the kid doesn't have access at home? Well, there are a couple of answers for this one. One is that you have to decide whether you're going to allow class time for students to access your videos in the event that they aren't able to access them at home. But also remember that most students will have smartphones and smart technology on them and be able to access videos regardless of where they are. And when something arises where students are not, most of the students will also have access before or after school through our libraries and through the township library. So access is actually becoming less and less of an issue. And then the other question that happens is, well, what happens when the kids don't watch the videos at home? So you have to think through in a similar way that you would have traditional homework. How are you going to address those students who don't watch the video? And you'll find that there are a lot of teachers who are actually writing about different ways that they address this issue.
And I'm answering questions about my flipped classroom. This question comes from Bill in Minnesota. What if students don't watch the videos? Well, this is always an interesting question. First, I think you have to require something of the students to ensure that they are doing their part, that they're interacting with the information. So I have them take notes. That might look different for each teacher. I expect them to copy down definitions, copy down a couple of examples, and go through the material. So requiring that of them, you know quickly who has done what they needed to do to be prepared for class. Of course, there's always going to be students that don't do their part, that don't do homework for whatever reason. And these students are easily identified in the classroom. You can take them, send them back to a computer right away, and have them do what they need to do while the rest of the class can move through the information and get started.
So here are just a few resources as you're starting to get into learning more about the flipped classroom. And because this is on video, this is a great place to pause it. Write down some of these websites so you can look them up on your own. I highly recommend Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sam's book, Flip Your Classroom. It's a fast read and it's got a lot of wonderful ideas in it. But you'll also find some great ideas on Edutopia, as well as some information from flippedlearning.com, which I mentioned earlier, and the Flipped Classroom Network. There is a wonderful Google Doc that Dan Spencer has put together, which has every resource imaginable, including all sorts of free screencasting materials and where teachers have been housing their videos. So I would highly recommend that last resource by Dan Spencer. So there you have it. It's time to get to it and create some videos. So try and take some time right now. Create a simple class video by taking perhaps a PowerPoint or a Prezi or presentation that you already do and using a screencasting program, maybe something like Screencast-O-Matic or Jing or Camtasia, to record yourself talking, much like this video. There are a couple of key things you want to keep in mind. One is that your video should be less than 10 minutes in order to keep your students' attention. You You want to ask your students to complete some sort of specific activity as they watch. In order to grab their attention, you might want to think about using other videos or recording yourself in the video in the corner so that they can see you. Good luck, and good luck flipping your classroom.